They destroyed his gate. No warning, no approval, just a wrecking crew sent by the HOA. Their excuse? It didn't match the aesthetic. But what happened next turned the tables in a way they never expected. And trust me, they paid for it big time. But let's start from the beginning. James stood frozen, his jaw tightening as he stared at the empty space where his gate once stood. The iron structure, designed to complement his home's architecture and provide an added layer of security, was gone, erased as if it had never existed. The driveway, once framed by intricate black metalwork, was now nothing more than a barren stretch of concrete leading to his house. The ground bore the unmistakable marks of heavy machinery, tire tracks cutting through the dirt where the posts had been ripped from the earth. His pulse pounded in his ears as he turned to Mr. Whitman, whose weathered face carried a mix of sympathy and frustration. "They didn't even knock," the old man muttered. "Just showed up with a crew, started tearing it down like they owned the place. A couple of us tried to intervene, but they waved some paperwork around and threatened fines. Said it was all pre-approved by the board." James exhaled sharply, his fingers curling into fists at his sides. The HOA. He had put up with their nonsense before. Pointless warnings about trash cans being visible from the street, complaints about the shade of blue on his shutters. But this was something else. They had crossed a line. He took quick strides toward his front door, his boots grinding against the gravel that had been disturbed by the demolition. A single sheet of paper flapped against the wood, held in place by a piece of tape. He ripped it off, his eyes scanning the words with growing disbelief. **** Notice of HOA violation. Unauthorized structure removed in accordance with community guidelines. You may submit an appeal for review at the next HOA meeting. ***, appeal? Appeal? His gate was gone. They hadn't sent a warning, hadn't given him a chance to respond. They had simply taken it down and left a cold, impersonal notice in its place. The audacity, the absolute arrogance. James's grip tightened around the paper, crumpling it in his fist as a sharp breath escaped through clenched teeth. He had worked hard for his home, followed the rules, paid his dues, and this was how they repaid him. His gaze lifted toward the HOA office down the street. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. James spent the next few days methodically building his case. Every spare moment was dedicated to gathering evidence. Photographs of the gate before its destruction, purchase receipts proving ownership, copies of city permits confirming its compliance with zoning laws. He combed through HOA bylaws, highlighting every section that contradicted their actions. Not once had he received a notice. Not a single warning. They had gone straight to demolition, treating his property like an afterthought. By the time the HOA meeting arrived, James was armed with facts. But facts, he knew, wouldn't be enough. He had seen how these meetings worked, how the board wielded its authority like a weapon, shutting down homeowners with bureaucratic jargon and smug indifference. This time, he wouldn't let them steamroll him. The room was sterile, lined with cheap carpeting and rows of folding chairs. At the front, the HOA board sat in a semicircle like a panel of judges. Margaret Caldwell, the HOA president, perched in the center, her neatly pressed blazer and icy demeanor exuding control. The moment James stepped forward, she offered a small, patronizing smile and motioned for him to speak. "You had no right to destroy my property," he began, keeping his voice even despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "That gate was legal. It was approved by city zoning laws, and I never received a single violation notice." Margaret laced her fingers together, her expression calm. "The HOA has the authority to enforce community aesthetics, Mr. Carter. Your gate was unsightly." James almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Unsightly. His tone sharpened. It was a wrought iron gate, a high-end installation that blended perfectly with my property. Half the neighborhood has fences and decorative gates. Margaret gave a slow, dismissive nod. The board determined that it didn't align with the vision for the community. She tilted her head. "If you'd like to submit a request for a new, approved gate, we'd be happy to discuss it, after you pay a fine for unauthorized construction." James felt his pulse hammer in his ears. This wasn't about aesthetics. This was a power play, a shakedown disguised as governance. He met Margaret's gaze, unflinching. "See you in court." James wasted no time. He hired a lawyer, someone with a reputation for taking on overreaching HOAs and winning. The lawsuit was filed swiftly: destruction of private property, damages, and violation of due process. The HOA was used to bullying homeowners into submission, counting on the hassle and expense of legal action to deter any real resistance. But James wasn't like the others. He wasn't backing down. When the trial began, it was clear the HOA had underestimated him. Their legal team, polished and smug, tried to frame the case as a simple enforcement of aesthetic guidelines, insisting that the board had acted within its authority. They claimed James's gate had never been officially approved, and that removal was a necessary corrective measure. James's lawyer dismantled their argument with brutal efficiency. First, he presented the city permits, proving beyond doubt that the gate had been legally installed and compliant with local zoning laws. Then, he revealed internal HOA emails, obtained through discovery, that showed the board had never issued a single warning or notice of violation. Neighbors testified, one after another, stating that their decorative gates, many far more elaborate than James's, had never been targeted by the HOA. The board's argument crumbled. Then came the final blow. James's lawyer stood, holding up a printed copy of a city ordinance, one that explicitly stated that HOAs had no legal authority to remove permanent structures without due process. The courtroom fell silent as the judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "This was a clear overreach of power," she said, her voice carrying an edge of disapproval. She turned toward the HOA's legal team. "The plaintiff is to be compensated for the full replacement value of the destroyed property." James exhaled, tension releasing from his shoulders. He had won. But the best part, the judge wasn't finished. She straightened, flipping through her notes before speaking again. "Furthermore," she continued, "since the HOA demands aesthetic compliance, they will fund the construction of a new gate, one that meets both HOA and city regulations." She glanced at Margaret Caldwell, her tone cool. "At their expense." The color drained from Margaret's face. For the first time, she had nothing to say. A month later, James stood in his driveway, watching as workers installed his new high-tech security gate, equipped with motion sensors, smart access, and reinforced steel, all funded by the HOA. Margaret Caldwell and her board members were forced to approve the design. They had no choice. The court order mandated it as the final panel clicked into place. James turned to see a group of neighbors watching. Mr. Whitman chuckled. "Looks like you got the last laugh, son." James smirked. "Oh, I'm just getting started." The HOA had made a powerful enemy, and he had no intention of letting them get away with their power games again.